please welcome Dr. Radhika Dirks.
That was a powerful talk, Anders. Love it, except I'm going to disagree with you. The future is not just man, but man-powered, superpowered by machines. If you want to protect your history, write it. If you want to protect your future, build it. Artificial intelligence, ladies and gentlemen, AI is here for the third time in its history, for the third time in our human history, sprung from the brilliant minds of Turing, Gödel, and many, many, many more from the previous generation. It's now back. And the rage of AI, and the reason why AI is the rage is because this time it's different. It's different because not only is it here to stay, it's here to pave the way for futuristic moonshots. Today I'm going to show you a glimpse of my world, the world of artificial intelligence. I come from Silicon Valley, where I had XLabs, and it's a moonshot factory building a blueprint for the future that we care about, powered by AI. And my goal here is really simple. I want to ignite a spark, kindle something in you that'll take shape, grow, so much that you are going to start thinking bigger, question more, question more. And more importantly, build a future that is worthy of something super ambitious for mankind. That's my goal, rather simple. So artificial intelligence. What is artificial intelligence? The only thing people in AI or anywhere can agree upon is the A part, the artificial part. That means non-human, it's inorganic, likely silicon. What about the I part? What is intelligence? Simone de Beauvoir, an existentialist philosopher, one of my favorites, says intelligence is a way of disclosing being. Silicon Valley says intelligence is a general-purpose problem solver. Are we just general-purpose problem-solving machines? I think not. So then what is intelligence? It's ambiguous. We can't answer it. And that's part of the problem. That's what leads to this confusion about AI, the hype about AI. What is AI? Is it a technology? Is it a tool? Is it a belief? Or is it just a bunch of hope? Well, I have a framework, and it goes like this. It's really, really easy to understand. It's very intuitive, and you will have a gauge for what AI is, what it's not, and what it can be, and what's beyond AI. It's very simple. What we'll be plotting here, it's a scale, and it goes from left to right. We're plotting how difficult things are for humans. And from bottom to top, we're plotting how things are difficulty-wise for computers, for machines. And this is plotted today, so it's a snapshot of what is possible today. And on the bottom left, yeah, these are things that's easy for humans, easy for computers, who cares about them, out. Bottom right, these are things that humans find difficult, but computers today find very, very easy. Things like manipulating large numbers, things like connecting people, marketplaces, optimization algorithms. Great. So let's jump to the top left, the quadrant called artificial intelligence. This is simply mimicking what humans can do naturally. So things like vision. A 3-year-old can pick out a cat or a dog or any other kinds of species that it has heard, or he or she has heard, in any storybooks without ever seeing that exact breed, type, or shape of animal. A machine today can pick out a dog image or a cat image, provided it's not really hidden, provided it's not in a forest, provided a lot of things, and provided it has seen it 1,000,000 times before, the training data. So that's where machines are today, But that itself is kind of amazing because with that, we can do huge possibilities. Another narrow intelligence application, moving, locomotion. This is where the robotics comes in. Yeah, moving in space, manipulating things. Maybe I should lift that, yeah, just to show what I want. So, okay, this is a quadrant of artificial intelligence. All we're doing here is mimicking human intelligence, and the reason for this is because we don't really know what intelligence is. There's no definition. No artificial intelligence researcher or scientist, philosopher, cognitive scientist, neuroscientist has a standard for us to compare things to, and that's why we have the Turing test. The Turing test simply compares if a machine is as intelligent as a human. Rather, can a machine mimic a human? And that's why that's a standard. But it's a little bit flawed, right? Because if we only compare intelligences to something that looks, talks, and feels like us, well, first of all, we can talk about whether that's a fair comparison. There are other types of intelligences, because intelligence is not a one-dimensional parameter space. There are other types of intelligences that we're used to just in the human arena, but beyond human. And that brings me to the quadrant on the top right, amplified intelligence. What if we create intelligences that are different from humans, that can empower and superpower humans? Computers are very, very good at manipulating complex information, remembering complex information, and pulling out complex patterns. Things that humans are not really good at because we were evolved, we were designed in a different environment, designed to solve different problems. So what if we can augment? And what does this quadrant called amplified intelligence look like? Problems here include things like drug discovery, which is a computationally very challenging approach. Very complex computations have to go into it. Automating science, that's a possibility. And predicting black swans. Black swans refer to rare events that are unpredictable, but rather obvious in hindsight. It's coined by Nassim Taleb. And today we'll dig a little bit into this. But first, the morphology that you draw upon to build these algorithms, whether you're in the quadrant of AI or in the quadrant of amplified intelligence, really matters. And that brings us to the big buzzword of today, deep learning. All deep learning is 80s algorithms running on 2010s computers. What it really is it goes back to the days of perceptrons, and all we're doing here is modeling in a very, very reductionist way how human neurons work to ones and zeros and matrices and using that for computation. The reason this time is different, if I say, hey, it's those 80s algorithms on 2010s computers, is because the computational power available around us is so large. But here's the problem. If you take this as your hammer, then everything is going to look like a nail, and you can't really solve problems beyond what it's meant to be. Therefore, we have other things in the AI toolkit. These are models that come not just from neuroscience, they come from statistics, from physics, from biology, whatnot, things that we know. And this is what makes AI incredibly exciting. It is what I call a super accentuating technology. It's an amplifying technology. What do I mean by that? So, not only can AI help with every single one of these fields, biology, chemistry, infrastructure, whatnot, the progress in each of these fields can be fed back. Bring me a model from evolution, bring me a model from biology, bring me a model from physics, and I will integrate it into my computer, into my algorithms to help solve a problem that meets its morphology. That is incredibly exciting because the story of modern age, the story that historians call industrialization, and economists call or measure via progress, is one of increasing automation. And that's something we should remember while we are worried about the future of AI taking over and things like that. Our dharma is one of progress, and AI is going to help us there. The second reason why I'm incredibly excited about AI is because it forces something so human, something so important, and that's philosophical progress. We kicked off this talk with what is intelligence? That in the long history of humans questioning everything about the world and the meaning of life, that is actually a relatively new question. We don't yet have an answer for that. So how can you create something intelligent if you don't have a definition, or even better, if you don't have a system? Will it just automatically emerge? And let me assure you that AGI, that artificial general intelligence, that summarizes the entire quadrant on the left top, that mimics an entire human and all of humanity, we don't really have any viable path toward it. So does the thinking then become, hey, if we build it, we will learn more about it? And engineers do think that way, and there's some merit to that. We actually learn more about a system. Perhaps we learn more about us. But more importantly, philosophical progress leads itself to societal progress. Most physicists, brilliant minds, technologists, mathematicians start out actually asking very large philosophical questions. For example, Alan Turing, one of the fathers of AI, starts out in his 1950 paper asking, can machines think? And then very quickly does a classic bait and switch. He says, this is a problem that's too complex to answer right now. So instead, how about we ask a simpler question? Can machines imitate humans? And that became later known as the Turing test. So it's by taking these large philosophical questions that do we make progress. So we all know that technology is applied science. Science is applied philosophy. So quick way of summarizing that. Mankind, humans, we are either our morals or our machines. And AI is going to help with both. So why now? Why is now the time where it's going to stay and be big and actually pave the way for futuristic moonshots? Well, 3 reasons. The first is that of compute. We're all, actually not me, I left mine in there, but we're all typically carrying around a 1985 equivalent of a supercomputer, the Cray supercomputer, in our pockets. The amount of computing power that we have is incredible. The fact that we're using it for Instagram and Snapchat and things like that, let's not mind that. But it's incredible what you can do with it, which is why the 80s algorithms, you remember the chart with the different little circles and the connections? You can add more hidden layers, and that's what makes it deep. The second is data. Most machine learning or any other kind of math or pattern recognition is incredibly hard without any data. We don't know if our boyfriends are going to be amazing or our soulmates are going to actually show up when we need them. You judge that based on previous data. And now we have data to where these machines can actually learn, get trained, and start making predictions. This wasn't possible before. And the reason why 1 and 2 is even more powered is the third, which is that it's distributed. What do I mean by that? Cloud, smartphones. Not only are these infrastructures in place to where anybody can access them, but they allow for anybody in the world to be able to contribute via collecting data, via computing. And this is really, really brilliant. So suddenly, we're not just talking about some scientists in different universities or research groups working on this. We have minds everywhere in the world, diverse intelligences working on these problems, applying them to different problems. Remember how AI is a super accentuating, amplifying technology? Well, now it's boom, 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 and that's exactly what we're seeing. So compute, data, distributed makes this time different. But I don't want to walk away just giving a really fiery talk with no actual tangible things. So let me tell you what is possible now. This is stuff from my previous company called Selden, where we were predicting black swans. Specifically, we were building a computational framework, one AI system, to predict the rise and fall of societies, meaning predicting things like labor strikes. We predicted 62 live labor strikes around 12 countries in the world, gathering all kinds of data, things that you wouldn't even think about, things that are very obvious in hindsight, and things that are extremely interesting, that are neither obvious, whether in foresight or hindsight. This is how our AI saw the world, how it characterized different societies, based not just on political systems or economic systems, but everything else it could see. And we used this information to start classifying violence. And we said, hey, can we see violence coming up in different countries? And Selden was able to call out the rise of instability in Iraq and Syria 2 weeks before the media even coined the term ISIS. And this was June 2014. So those are just glimpses. So let's dive into something that is a bit closer to home. Oil predictions. So this is one AI system, by the way, that is automated. It's not customized models, and that makes it so much more powerful. Because it's not just trying to predict labor strikes. It's not just trying to predict violence. It's trying to do all this in a complex mismatch, and it tells us what it can and cannot predict. And so oil popped up as, hey, I can actually predict rare oil jumps. And what you're seeing here on this graph, and I want to spend just a minute on this because it's cool, is how AI actually works. So the gray graph, the gray bands that you're seeing, here, laser pointer, look at that. The gray band that you're seeing, never mind. The gray band that you're seeing is what the AI considers to be normal movement. The green dots are the monthly median prices, and it's trained on 12 years of training data. And then 3 years of data is left out. And this is typically how AI algorithms work. You have a training set, and then you have a validation set, and then you have the real proof of pudding, which is the live predictions and the matching with the real world. So in the 3 years of prediction, this is data the system has never, ever seen before. It's calling out jumps, and that's indicated by the flag, the one, the S dot. So in February, these are predictions made 4 months before the actual event, so that gap between the two lines, the two bars, basically says when it made the prediction and what happened. And all it's doing, it's not predicting tick-by-tick movement. It's saying when that green dot is going to jump outside of the band. Is it going to go up? Is it going to go down? And when? And this is really, really hard to do. When we started Selden, oil was trading around $100-ish a barrel. And sitting in September, sitting in July, the very first, if we had had those algorithms running back then, it would have said, hey, in July it's going to go further up. And then we're watching this, and in September it starts saying, in September 2015 now, and it starts saying that the $100 barrel, a gallon is going to go, a barrel is going to go way down. And I didn't believe it, because I had to go and check, because I'm not an economist, I'm not an oil person per se, and checked with that, and it turned out to be right, and it continues to get every single one right. And then came the live predictions. I cut it off after December over here, because you got to pay for the other live stuff. But yeah, we got 6 out of 8 jumps, however ridiculous they sounded. They went from 100 to 75 to 50 to 25 in Jan and February. And I said, there's no way this is going to happen. We didn't believe our algorithms. And so right here is a visualization, because I want to give you a feel for how complex this problem is. So this is a visualization of the 100,000 plus variables of the correlates that went into making that prediction, which, by the way, has an accuracy of 90%. Which means the events that we did say were going to happen happened at an accuracy of 90%, and we were completely comfortable missing some of them. And that brings in the nuance of what do these numbers mean and the trade-offs involved. And it's important. It's important to know what you're designing the algorithms to do. If you were designing it for tick-to-tick movements like a hedge fund, you would think differently, because we cared about knowing what's going to happen, rare events, disruptions in the world. We designed it differently. The morphology, going back to the first slide on AI, the morphology that you use dictates the problem, what you can solve. So here, what you're seeing is how complex this problem really is. 100,000 plus variables. We didn't spend too much time really thinking about what should go or when, because, hey, we're just humans, what do we know? You tell me. So we just dumped it with as much data from every different possible silo of data we could imagine. And lo and behold, each pixel here is a variable. So things like, corn prices, GDP, other oil, like natural gas movements, number of people, number of cars on the road. whatever it had access to, over different timescales. And the ones in green are positively correlated, and the ones in blue are negatively correlated. Things that are bunched up, the balls basically say that they're correlated with each other, and the ones that are really far off, like the cluster at the bottom, has absolutely nothing to do with the clusters on top. This, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly what we're asking our political scientists, our economists, and our hedge fund artists to do. Incredibly complex stuff. So, this was possible as of last year. What is possible now, and how do we pave the way for the future? This is what I'm working on. XLabs, Moonshot Factory in AI, and I'm realizing that moonshot is a very, very American term, so let's go back and define that. Like its namesake, like man going to the moon, a moonshot refers to something that is incredibly ambitious, but that's actually possible. And when it's achieved, it changes the perception of what humanity thinks of as possible. It's leapfrogs. So with that, I want to give you with a specific moonshot that we like to work on and we think is fascinating, just to give you an idea. And it's inspired by science fiction. Diamond Age, a novel in which a technology called the Young Ladies Illustrated Primer is featured as a cognitive apprenticeship tool, meaning this is a device that teaches you, based on your past, how you learn, where you need to go, dictated completely by you. So it's contextual, it's history-based, and it gives back agency to the person. And we're not just talking about education here. It's about superpowering the person. And that, to me, is a really incredible moonshot. And this is what we do. We design what we want to see, and we start building. So I want to hear from you guys. You can email me at x@xlabs.ai. And specifically, what I want to hear about is, what is your moonshot? If you weren't limited by computing, if we weren't limited by data, and I told you there are incredible people who can work on these things, what would you want to work on? And lastly, I'll end with a joke. The synthetic biologists say that the DNA invented humans to put itself on the moon. Likewise, I think evolution designed humanity so that we can design the next species. Thank you very much.